and then you have to like, the judge could. All right, good morning. Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners work session for Wednesday, March 12th, 2025. It is 10:05 a.m. My name is Ty Mentor, Chair of the Board. To my left, Vice Chair Commissioner Wayne Fournier, Commissioner Rachel Grant, Commissioner Carolina Mejia on Zoom, and Commissioner Klaus is excused with another meeting. She's representing the county on. So we have written public comment that's available to be received up to 2 hours in advance of this meeting and will be distributed to the Board of County Commissioners when received. In that time frame, action may be taken at this meeting. Public virtual attendance is available on the Thurston County YouTube channel. We have a 3-item agenda. I wanted to start up front with a motion to amend the agenda to switch the order of items 1 and 2. That's because I know there's discussion amongst the board that should take place on the Yelm Trail issue, and I have to excuse myself and pass the baton to the vice chair at around 10:30-ish. So if
Second.
We have a second to that. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor say aye.
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 Okay, thank you. That motion is approved. So let's start with item, what's on the agenda is 2, has now been moved to 1. Yelm Rainier Tenino Trail parcel ownership transfer request.
Thanks so much, Chair. As our Public Works team is getting set up, and I'll let them introduce themselves in just a moment. Brief background on this item. We've had our partners at the City of Yelm reach out to a couple different points within the county to ask some questions about the trail and some things that they wanted to do. We were able to round up with the Yelm City Administrator and the Mayor to work on a point of contact which was established, and then we asked at that time Public Works Director Jennifer Walker to take the lead, since been transitioned over to our new Public Works Director. And so they have had those conversations with the City of Yelm, and they're here to kind of walk through what their request is and some options that staff are going to present for the board's consideration. And with that,
Hi, Manager and Chair. May I make a quick note that the packet for this morning's board work session was reposted and redistributed this morning. The materials for this item were corrected in the packet. Public Works submitted their materials to us in a timely manner, and our office made mistake of using old draft materials that were previously submitted. So we apologize for the mistake, and the updated materials are here for the commissioners also, who will arrive shortly.
Thank you so much for that, Clerk. Without further ado, we'll hand over to Public Works.
All right. Good morning, Commissioners. Karen Weiss, Thurston County Public Works Director. To my right, I will let Mike introduce himself then.
Mike Lohman, Road Operations Manager.
To my left.
Ed Marson, Parks and Trails Manager.
Okay, and under the Road Operations Divisions is the Parks and Trails Program. We may be joined shortly with Shannon Shula, a strategic planner. She is actually on a grant interview right now for some potential RCO grant funding, so that's also very important. All right, so again, Leonard provided context, so I'll go ahead and have us move to the next slide, please. So just as background for the section or the trail that we're talking about, the Yelm Rainier Tenino Trail is owned, operated, and maintained by Thurston County through our Parks and Trails program. For purposes of our discussion today, we're talking about approximately 1.6 miles of the Yelm Rainier Trail, Rainier Tenino Trail, which lie within the city of Yelm urban growth area. And within that 1.6 miles, there are approximately 7 county-owned parcels within the UGA. So I'll have you go ahead and next slide. So it's a little always hard to see on a slide up there, but that equates to 7 parcels. Looks like more because some of the parcels have the same parcel numbers, but that is the area that we're talking about. That is within the Yelm UGA. Up on the top right-hand side, upper right-hand side of the screen there, that is the terminus of the Yelm Rainier Tenino Trail. The parcel that we'll be talking about, we'll see a closer up view of it in a few minutes, is that, not that top right parcel, but the one that's right next to it, kind of in that green, where the green area is. So
Which number?
it is the one that says, oh, I guess I can turn around easier and see. Yes, thank you, Ed, Vanna. Perfect. Okay. All right, so the request, so Jennifer and I met in January, mid-January with some representatives from the city of Yelm. We met with Public Services Director, the Building and Planning Manager, and the Parks Public Services Operations Manager to talk through what their request was and give more information. So they own the parcel right below that. We'll take a look at that in a minute again on the map. And it abuts our parcel ownership on the Yelm Rainier Tenino Trail. They would like to develop a parking lot on their parcel, but there is not, based on their preliminary designs, not adequate space for them to build out that parking lot without it encroaching on our trail right away. They would like to apply for grant funding to help them pay for some of these infrastructure improvements, but their council would prefer to build something on land that they own as opposed to some land that others own, obviously. So they had reached out to request ownership of that section of the Yelm Rainier Tenino Trail that abuts their ownership parcel to proceed with the project. As we were talking through some of the considerations with Yelm staff, because we also will talk a little bit about being concerned about sort of a patchwork approach, like we own this, they own this, we own this kind of thing. They were also willing to consider ownership of more than one parcel within the UGA as a part of this proposition. I'll switch to the next slide. So again, we own the green, they own the area in red there, that little long triangular space. They also own across the street, or across 507, I should say. They own this area there. They may have future development plans for that, but they're looking at building, a parking lot in that red area there.
Would it be adjacent to the TPB?
Yes, yes, exactly.
It wouldn't,
Buy the golf course, right? They're talking about buying a golf course.
They
did
didn't
not
talk
have
to
that
us about that at all.
Okay, but it's not, that's not something that's, never mind.
That's not part of the conversation that we had with it. It was really about them wanting to develop that parking on that red triangular space.
But when you said encroach, so it's the parking lot would be on their parcel, but what?
They do not anticipate that they could build the infrastructure without it going onto our trail corridor. That there's not enough property there in that triangle for them to build the parking area that they are interested in building.
But if we let them do that, it would be, how much of encroachment, I guess is my.
They did not share plans with us, and I don't even know, I think Ed had a follow-up conversation with some staff, and I don't believe they actually have a definitive design.
No, I talked to the Public Works Director and they did not have a set of drawings. They,
6.5 feet's not very wide. Can they even put a
65 feet.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm like,
sorry, yeah. No, it's
That's
65
different.
feet,
Never
yeah.
mind.
Yeah,
Like, they can't put a parking lot in 6.
yeah.
Those are for those mini cars.
Yeah.
They've done some conceptual work on it, but nothing that they were able to share.
Thank you.
Okay, so next slide, please.
Like,
Okay.
if
Yeah,
they were to
no,
put a parking lot there, would there have to be like, I mean, so I guess that's a state highway, right? Wouldn't there be all kinds of like traffic requirements and additional turn lane? I mean, I know it's not easy to just, for a public entity to just plop something next to a state highway like that. I would imagine that there'd be a lot involved.
I would assume so.
We would assume so,
So this
but
may
we
be a little preliminary.
they seem
They've been
very
conceptually
committed.
talking about it for
Yeah, and
a couple of
Couple
years
years.
because they approached Commissioner Mejia.
Yeah, oh, I've
Mr.
been
McKeon
talking to
met with
Joe
them.
about it for years, and I've been like, oh, why, I
Yeah.
don't understand why you wanna do this.
And we were being responsive to, let's take all of those requests that have pinged different parts of the county, pull them together. But it sounds like they didn't come with renderings or,
Correct.
any type of drawings for the staff to understand exactly what they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I'm not a road person, but I would think that the state would have a lot to say about putting turn lanes in and traffic control. I mean, am I off? You
I
guys
think
are
all
the
of those
you guys are the
things, I
road
think all
people.
of those things are true. It's just that was not the nature of our conversation, really. The conversation was about, hey, we'd like to acquire this piece of land to help facilitate our building of this parking area.
And who
how
knows
can-
if they would share an entrance and extend the parking.
From
Who knows?
TP, yeah, okay.
They could be having those conversations, but we just don't know.
Okay, I'll stop talking. and let you-
No, you're fine. I mean, that's fine. We aren't able to give that information because they weren't able at that point to share it with us. So we don't really know how far down the road they are on that, so. Okay, so when we are considering this proposal or this request, we wanted to bring forward those items that that are consideration points, I think, for the board and the county, and as they think through this. So the first is, we want to just remind, we have a level of service here at Thurston County that has been board approved as a part of our Parks, Open Space and Trails Plan. I know everybody loves hearing about the post plan because we'll be bringing it back to you again for an update in this next budget cycle, but we have established our level of
Do you have a
service.
date on that?
Huh?
Do you have a date on that?
Every time we talk to you about parks and trails. And it's also in our comprehensive plan, and so that level of service is 3 acres per 1,000 residents. Our current inventory of developed parklands is about 972 acres. Our projected need to meet that level of service, established level of service is an additional 209 acres by 2040 to meet that, which is a total of about 1,181 total acres, then combine the 972 plus the 209. We can give you an idea that it's about $1 million per mile to construct new trail. We've determined that through our latest trail connectivity projects. We just expanded Trouter Road and we're working on the glacial heritage piece of the Gate Belmore Trail. So did some quick math, and again, it's really hard because every trail corridor is a little bit different in terms of widths, but that's probably about, to meet that 209 acres, is about $11 million potentially in terms of trail. Any questions on that before we go to the next slide? Anything on the level of service? Okay. Other considerations as we think about this are maintenance, who maintains what and how. Right now, in the areas that we're talking about on the Yelm Rainier Tenino Trail, the city and county both share maintenance responsibilities. The city of Yelm primarily provides mowing within the UGA in their area. We provide a lot, some additional mowing and other items, as you can see, litter collection, vandalism and graffiti removal, which, as I understand, talking to Ed, is not insignificant. We actually respond to quite a bit of graffiti repairs and vandalism repairs there.
In that specific area?
In that
Kind of near the
specific
skate
area.
park and, yeah.
And you mentioned that it seems to be even a little bit larger of an issue in that area than some of the other areas of the trail.
Yeah, more vandalism, graffiti. We have picnic tables out there that are quite often vandalized. We have to replace boards. And all conversations I've had with the Public Works Director.
We don't currently manage this under an ILA, but we certainly, that will be a part of our options moving forward. We wanted to think about trail connectivity and ownership transparency. So again, this comes back to what I mentioned earlier. From a operational standpoint, we prefer not to have chunks in the middle of trails that are owned by different people, right? Here's our area, now this belongs to City of Yelm, then it belongs to Thurston County for a while. That doesn't make really good operational sense. And then also there's a wanting to make sure from a transparency standpoint for the public, that there might be some confusion. Who owns the trails? Who should I call, right? Whose responsibility is it to take care of something that's in a section of the trail? And then I think it's probably fair to say that whatever decision is made here may lead to other requests for similar types or other types of ownership requests. So we just want to make sure that whatever we determine we have some ability to apply that consistency between jurisdictions to go forward. All right, so we've developed 3 options for consideration here. Very high level, we'll talk about each of them individually. One is to allow development within the corridor where we still own that parcel and would just put in place an interlocal agreement. That's not unlike some that we have in other areas of the trail. Option 2 would be to transfer ownership of the parcel area that is needed for construction of their project only. So not the entire parcel, but a part of that parcel. And the third would be to transfer up to 1.6 miles of trail, either some or all of the parcels that are in their UGA area. So go ahead, next slide.
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
Do we
of course.
already have an agreement with Yelm, like a memorandum of understanding or ILA on
For maintenance, isn't that what it says?
No, we don't. When the phase of the Yelm Rainier Tenino was constructed, there was an agreement in, I believe, 96 for maintenance within the city limits. But nothing formal since then.
Okay.
But for clarification, the county does have an ILA with the city of Yelm. But the specific, for other activities, but specific to the trail, this is not, these activities having to do with any maintenance or anything to do with the trail, that is not covered in the ILA that we have.
The ILA we have covers like allowing them to mow on our easement.
So,
Road maintenance
Road maintenance,
activities
street
primarily.
striping,
Okay.
that type of thing.
We could do work for
So,
them, basically.
so with that current he says ILA,
Yep.
it could be amended to add a section if that's what the board wanted to do,
Potentially, we'd have to take a look at the language and when it was done.
or just a new ILA.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Potentially a new ILA. Because I think it is very specific to the
Yeah.
road operations activities. Okay.
Commissioner Mejia, sorry. Go ahead.
No, and so Yelm does have an ILA, but the one with Tenino and other jurisdictions is broader, is what I'm hearing. I just need that clarification.
It is specific to the activities that were negotiated or discussed between the two agencies. So, Some of them are broad interlocal agreements, and then there's activities and like task orders that get worked out. But specific to the ILA with the city of Yelm, trail work is not, maintenance and operations is not included in that ILA.
I think it specifically talks about road activities within the ILA, road and traffic types of activities.
No, thank you.
Okay, so option one, allow development within the, with trail corridor. Again, we have other instances where this has occurred on other trails. So this would include development of an interlocal agreement with the city of Yelm and the county. We would allow them to develop within the corridor. It wouldn't affect our level of service goals. We would still be able to maintain that. We would still own and maintain that property, or I guess I should say we will still own that property. It doesn't have a financial impact to the county, and it also provides us an opportunity to have some final approval for what that project looks like and how that would be encroaching or, you know, be moved into the trail corridor. And we would, as a part of that ILA, identify the specific maintenance activities that the city of Yelm would be responsible for. Okay, so option number two is to transfer ownership of the parcel area, of our parcel area that's needed to complete the project. We could do that through a boundary line adjustment. That would minimize the amount of parklands that we lose, wouldn't significantly affect our level of service goals. It allows the city to own the parcel for purposes of them applying for the grant that they're interested in and develop the parking structure. Again, though, it would allow us some.
Structure?
Parking infrastructure, parking lot,
Okay.
sorry. Be more careful with my words there, sorry.
Sounds
Parking.
different.
Yes, they're looking for a, no.
Yeah.
in that, yeah. And again, would allow us to have some input on that project proposal.
Well, so that third bullet, apply for grant, I mean, I'm learning a couple things about this I didn't know before today. And so, I mean, them owning this property, just the fact that they have to encroach some amount on our property, but the main piece of the project would be on their property, is that gonna inhibit them from applying for a grant?
It should not. We understand that we would be able to work that out with the granting agency. I believe it was more a council desire that they did not invest and develop on land that they didn't own.
Even if that was like 15% of the project?
That's our understanding, that the council did not want to move forward with developing on land that they did not own.
Okay, I'm gonna jump in, cause I have to excuse myself and I apologize. I came into this meeting with one kind of way of thinking about it, cause I thought these were chunks of trail within the city of Yelm. That's how it was described to me, which would have completely changed my perspective. But if we're talking about the UGA, and we're talking about the fact that the project is mostly on property that Yelm already owns, which alleviates 3 or 4 of my concerns, I would think option one would make the most sense.
Before you leave, was there an option 4 where they transfer the property to us and we build the parking lot? Cause we build good parking lots. To me, that's a simple solution, and that's what we did in Tenino. We've got a parking lot that the county came in, you guys built our parking lot with extra asphalt at the end of the year, and it cost virtually nothing to anyone.
We did not bring that up, we did not bring that forward as an option.
Is that a simple,
it is a
elegant
viable
solution?
It is an option. It is an option.
Right, it was like, I got a
phone
phone call one day, hey, we got extra asphalt, you want your parking lot paved? Sure, pave the parking lot. Next thing I knew, the parking lot's paved. Like,
Just for clarification, we'd have a little bit clearer process than that, but
I was just thinking of county resources and, you know, Yelm at their State of the Community was like the only jurisdiction apparently where tax revenues were flying through the roof. And so it's like, I don't wanna inhibit their ability to use their resources to improve something for the community. And especially if we were talking about an area within their city limits, that's a totally different thing. UGA, I think there's a good argument to keep the consistency of that, but that's why I was asking about the grant. Like, I don't wanna do anything that would inhibit the moving forward of something that will benefit the community to have the parking lot.
It is,
But ILA
Said
seems,
for confirmation, but we understood that we would be able to work with the granting agency, which I believe is RCO, that would not be an issue, that they did not own
just
that.
might be a council hangup that they'd be putting a little bit of their project on county land, but
My understanding is that the city council voted that they did not want to apply for grant funding to build on somebody else's property. They felt that they
it's
wanted.
mostly their property.
Correct.
And so I will, I was with Mayor DePinto last night. I just want to kind of advocate a little bit on behalf of, it sounds, of what my understanding of this would be is that, I think they really just obviously want to get it past their council. That's one of the things that needs to happen, is that they want to be able to, they have an amazing person working out there on their staff, Cody, who really wants to see this go forward, and this seems to be a barrier. And then the other aspect or part I will say is that they also did mention, they really did want to be able to have the ability to help keep maintenance on the trail. That there are pieces of the trail that they would like to help with. And so that was my understanding of the two pieces, so.
And I talked to Joe about that quite a bit. Like, in my experience, 10 years, having a trail running through the city, never had a problem. Like, we had a maintenance agreement that said we would maintain it and the county would work hand in hand with us. And we leveraged that to our benefit every chance we could. And like, we saw it as an opportunity for our partnership, and that partnership, it paid off a lot of dividends. And, we had assistance in parking lot improvements, we had assistance in expanding the trail, and like, maybe it was an expanded MOU, but there was a clear maintenance agreement where the county wouldn't get upset if we mowed the lawn and improved things. And I mean, I can't imagine anybody would care if we allowed Yelm to assist in maintaining the trails, right? We're not saying they can't do that.
Absolutely not, right? We're looking for building out those partnerships and maintenance agreements with the jurisdictions to help maintain the area. We are thoughtful about, we would prefer not to have the luxury suite down at one end of the trail that we own and then have the other, right? We're looking for some level of consistency in our properties, but, those would be things that we could certainly establish and work through in that ILA development process, and we are, looking for opportunities to develop those partnerships.
And I think that you'll find that Commissioner Fournier is talking about, the same thing applies in the city of Rainier. It's an excellent partnership. They provide all maintenance throughout city limits. All maintenance. We will come through and as needed, perform some mowing, some litter or trash removal, some pruning, something of like, but it's very minimal because they do such a great job. They're happy with it, we're
We built
happy
them a
with it.
bathroom, we built them sports courts,
Absolutely.
because it's right off
Absolutely.
the trail. And that's why I kept being like, guys,
Yeah.
you want to be right off the trail so the county can help you build this out. Like, if we're building a bathroom in Rainier, I don't know why we couldn't help or take that property and build a parking lot in Yelm, and that, I mean,
So I think, so knowing, when Commissioner Fournier was in my district, right, I gained a lot of experience with the trails specifically. I know I dragged Shannon to one of the meetings for the trail expansion, right, and
Yes, and almost got her recruited by that agency.
yeah, I know. I'm sorry about that. But I just wanna, and I've had multiple conversations, with Public Works and Mayor, Joe DePinto when, he initially brought this up, and understanding where they're coming from, right, and knowing that this has to pass through council, I just want there to be like some equity across the other jurisdictions and what we're doing with them as well, right, because we're allowing a lot of that, interlocal agreements, we're very broad with some of them, and I think that's great because it allows that partnership, but if we start transferring ownerships, my concern is, then are we just gonna have this checkered system in our trail systems as more jurisdictions are like, well, we'll own the trail too, and then it's going to become difficult for our minimal staff to then like have to jump around this checkered pieces. And so I'm interested in the option 4 that Commissioner Fournier suggested, and I'm wondering if that's something that we can talk with Yelm Public Works about is, you know, is there a possibility for us to do the paving, right? And then enter into an interlocal agreement where they maintain the whole this whole section?
What I would say, Commissioners, option 4 would probably be option 1 enhanced, right? Where we allow development within the trail corridor, but then we look at what the process and partnership is for for our team to take that over and develop the parking lot. It sounds like there have been those types of partnerships, correct me if I'm wrong,
There have been.
in the past. I know that our team does that work really, really well. I think what we were wanting to do today is be responsive to the requests, because again, this has come different places in the county to what the city was asking for, but ultimately, that's the options that the team has put together, and we can definitely, with direction from commission today, go back to City of Yelm and see what we can develop with them to come back for an update on if that's something they're willing to do.
I like the option 1 enhanced.
And can I just ask a quick clarifying question? So, we just don't, so it sounds like Tenino and other jurisdictions kind of already have a built-out, really well-formed ILA that establishes who's doing what kind of a thing. And we just haven't done that with, Yelm yet on this. Is
Generally-
that kind of what's up? I
So
mean,
generally, though, that is a request that's coming from the agency because they're willing to dedicate staff to maintain the trail that's within their city limits. And so the formalization of an ILA, I mean, that's not complicated at all. It's the will to, we want to dedicate our staff, and we are more than, Public Works is more than willing to have those conversations and work out the specifics. So that's why.
right. And then did you guys feel that in the conversations with Yelm that, let's just pretend they didn't ask about the parking lot for a second. And that's what this is that formal kind of request of, we want to have an ILA so that we can maintain the trails, or do you feel
No,
like it was the
we were
opposite?
focused on
The initial conversation, when Commissioner Mejia and I met with them, it was very much focused on this specific project that they had acquired, either had or had just recently acquired this parcel, had a triangle piece. The Public Services Director, Cody, had an idea. He hadn't gotten that through council yet, so he was just doing some legwork, and I had conveyed to him at that time that the transferring ownership of the trail was a board action. That might take longer, but absolutely, we could work with them on if they wanted to do improvements and they wanted to encroach a portion of that onto the trail. We just needed to see a schematic. We needed to see kind of what they were doing, and that's what we were waiting for. I checked in with them a couple of times, didn't get a response. And then there was an outreach, I think, by their planning staff person, I think within the Public Services group. And that's when it started kind of pinging around, and Leonard said, okay, well, we need to, like, where are all of the requests coming from? So,
Because they were all just a little bit different.
yes.
So the last meeting that you had, we asked the city administrator to designate somebody, and he did. What was the request to Commissioner Grant's question? Did they,
The request was specifically about the parcel ownership.
and did they bring up a desire to have an enhanced ILA?
They did not. That was not discussed. I wouldn't say that they would be adverse to that for sure, because I think we did talk about the fact that we could accomplish some of these things through an ILA, but they definitely were focused on the ownership of the parcel.
Can I ask just, I think going back to Commissioner Fournier's point of like, if we were to tell them like, the county will, because they're focused, when we spoke with Mayor DePinto in that meeting, it was mainly about the grant was the big piece of it. They didn't think they could go for this grant. And unless they had this ownership of the piece, which is not, RCO doesn't function like that. And so that was one of the main pieces of it. And then there was another piece of like they wanted to hire an additional staff to help maintain that area, right? And I think that's what they were trying to get through council is, but if we're ticking the boxes on these different items of things they want to accomplish, or at least assisting them, I think, you know, I wouldn't see why we couldn't have a conversation and be like, you know, if we're able to kind of assist with some of these things, is this still a possibility for us to do? And, you know, I just thought Rainier is the other jurisdiction that has a pretty broad ILA with us as well.
I forgot I'm the chair now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I truly, like, based on my experiences, like, I got so much out of being partners with the county. And I really think that any jurisdiction on the trail would be missing the boat to cancel that out, right? Like, and for today and for into the future, that partnership is important. And I would hate to cut them out of that opportunity now and forever, you know, just based on, I don't know what, like bad communications or something like that. You know, with some of these grants, you have to show control of the property. You can do that through a lease, potentially, some 100-year lease for this section where you're worried about that sliver of property. There's ways to show site control to allow for that grant to take place. You know, but I don't know, like, we pave parking lots all the time and we have extra asphalt sometimes. To me, that's the simple solution. Maybe that's just like
And
too
just to be
simple.
clear, the county roads operation is not running around with a
Thank you.
asphalt.
County manager.
Yeah, that's what you say.
No, we are not. We don't want public information requests.
Working
We
with
do not
these
do that
guys.
in the county at all.
We can wait until.
Truck's on the way, Joe. But working with these guys was awesome.
not
Like,
do
working with
that in the
Shannon was
county.
great.
We're gonna
you know,
get a big
like,
machine, right?
and
We
the
are, yes.
opportunities that you miss when you I guess X out that relationship, you're really missing out on a lot of opportunities in the future. And I can only guess that maybe some members of their council are, why would we maintain the trail if it's not ours? Well, that's a conversation that we need to work on with them about being collaborators and being team members. And, you know, like, we put a big sign up together that said, this park is, you know, the cities and the counties. When you walk into Tenino Park, the city park, there's a sign that says, this is also a county park, and we're working this together. And it's good for it's been great for Rainier to have that, you know, that vision.
It comes back to some of those funding sources that are available, which are, we have the money sometimes for capital improvements, but not the
Exactly.
maintenance and operations, so that's
And we don't have all the parks
partnership.
down there, but we want to provide benefits to our citizens, so we want to work with them. And if we don't have that connection where their parks are, we miss those opportunities.
Vice Chair, you have a hand raised.
Yeah, well, I just want to kind of emphasize that I agree that, you know, I kind of like both what, you know, that Commissioner Mia and Commissioner Corney are saying, that I think we just need to have another conversation, really clarify the goals that they're trying, you know, that, because I definitely think that, that wanting to have an ILA in place so that they can help maintain was actually one of the goals, based on, conversations we had recently. And then, yeah, and so I just think that I love this idea too, though. I really feel like we need to align with what the other parts of South County, how they, you know, so that it's not, you know, a one-off. And so, but I think we can definitely, get there. We just maybe one more conversation to talk about option 4.
I think that it's also good to go back in time a little bit and look at the establishment of those partnerships with Rainier and with Tenino, and those were born out of the cities individually wanting to develop on county property within the trail corridor, and that's been beneficial partnerships for all involved up to date. You know, and those ILAs or those agreements that have come from those developments then provide maintenance that frees our staff to, you know, provide a level of service elsewhere with those good partnerships in the cities. And they do a really good job at keeping that level of service. They take a lot of pride in their cities. We don't have to go around to those cities and police them or have conversations because they do such a great job. And I think that is something that definitely could be possible with the city of Yelm as well.
Absolutely.
So we would look for the board to provide direction to staff to explore whether it's an option 4 or an option 1 enhanced.
Expanded, yeah.
Yeah, expanded. And then we can go back to the city of Yelm and talk about these concepts, us helping them out with the paving of a parking lot, an enhanced ILA for park maintenance services, bring up the other successful partnerships we have with South County cities and the history, and then see what the city of Yelm would like to do, and then we can report back to the board.
Okay.
Yeah, I would really like to have a cool sign too.
We can make those, as you know.
Yes, I saw, I know.
So, we're giving board direction to explore option 1 enhanced, is that, we have nodding heads?
Yes.
Yes, understood.
Okay.
Good.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item of business, item 1, which became item 2, which is opioid settlement funds, One Washington Memorandum of Understanding. Thanks, you guys.
Good morning. Jen Freiheit, Director of Public Health and Social Services. Thank you.
I don't have enough here either.
In 2018, Thurston County joined many other jurisdictions in the state of Washington to file lawsuits against opioid manufacturers, distributors, marketers. Those lawsuits are now coming to fruition. Money is now being dispersed. Also in 2018, simultaneously, the Board of Health declared the opioid epidemic as a public health crisis. So that was also simultaneously happening. From that declaration, the opioid response task force was developed, and out of that came the opioid response plan. So now with these funding dollars coming forward, I will turn it over to Katie to talk about what this all means for us moving forward.
I think one comment, I just, Katie, with you here, wanted to commend you. You had a meeting with the Opioid Council recently, and unsolicited, I heard from one of the city administrators how excited they were to have someone so knowledgeable leading that, and it made them feel really good to know that the county had someone that knowledgeable. So whatever you did in that meeting, the glasses and all the professionalism that you brought to that, thank you, because it helped bolster. This is a very complicated conversation, and it has, literally life and death hangs in the balance. And so knowing that our city partners are supportive of the county, to receive that feedback with your leadership, appreciate it.
I do have to piggyback on that because having worked for other jurisdictions, it was great to see everybody come together and under Katie's leadership, agreeing and collaborating. It was really unique and amazing. So yes, thank you.
This is the presentation that you provided back in, is that correct?
Half of it, yeah. The second half would be next week.
All right, are we done talking about how cool Katie is? Never.
Katie Strozik, Opioid and Overdose Response Program Manager. So like the Assistant County Manager was saying, this presentation is the same set of slides and information that was shared at the Opioid Abatement Council meeting that was last week. It is broken down into 2 sections. So we've got the first section today, and then we have the second section next week for the second work session. It's just way too much information to fit all at once. So today we'll be going over kind of a basic overview, the background of opioid settlement information, kind of opioid settlement one-on-one, with next week then at next week's work session, diving more into the memorandum of understanding, allowable uses, the more deeper dive into the funding. So for today, we're gonna go over the background, the funding allocation, so starting to look at the dollar amounts that the jurisdictions are getting, mostly diving into the money that Thurston County has received and will be receiving. Looking at the Thurston County engagement efforts thus far, because while the Opioid Abatement Council just met last week for the first time, we have been working on opioid settlement related work for a couple years now. And then looking at one additional resource, just if you want a deeper dive, even more than the work sessions, there is an online resource that can be utilized as well. So kind of some background, we already touched on it a little bit. So this pairs with how the county started to file lawsuits in 2018 against opioid manufacturers and distributors and marketing companies. And then that ended up also being followed with the Board of Health having their crisis declaration, the formation of our opioid response task force, and all of the work that we've done since 2018. So with opioid settlement funding, it gets kind of complicated and it's not as cut and dry as it seems in the big media articles that come out with the huge dollar amounts. So all opioid settlement funding is gonna be shared, 50% being kept at the state level and 50% being allocated to local jurisdictions, both counties and cities who are participating. That 50% that stays at the state level is gonna be allocated through the normal legislature process. It is bound to the same type of conditions though that our funding is. So it's gonna be only allowed to be spent on opioid related remediation. So they can't just take opioid settlement money at the state and sweep it into a general fund. They can't use it for roads, anything like that. The state has to keep their 50% and still use it for opioid related activities. That other 50% then is then allocated to local participating jurisdictions, including Thurston County and then the cities of Lacey, Tumwater, and Olympia, for us to decide how we want to use that funding at the local level. Opioid settlement funding also comes from more than one settlement. I know the media makes it seem like there's kind of just one large settlement. It's actually a whole bunch of settlements, some larger than others, and they all are different payment structures, different payment amounts, different payment schedules, but they all are bound by the same conditions, which is gonna be the One Washington MOU, which we'll go over next week more in depth. But it isn't just one settlement that we're working with. So on this slide, you can kind of see that there are a ton of different settlements. So the big one that we hear about the most is going to be the distributor settlement. That's going to be the first settlement that was filed with McKesson, AmerisourceBergen, and Cardinal Health. It's the large settlement that had the most money attached to it. Since that distributor settlement though, there's been a bunch of smaller ones. So all of these are ones on the screen that have already been finalized, and most of these we've already received payment for or are scheduled to start receiving payment for. There are some other settlements that aren't mentioned here. There were a couple that ended up being smaller that only were allocated to the state, and then there are still some in progress. So as they find more companies, they file more settlements, and then they kind of just come down randomly to us. So we don't know if there will be more settlements from here. This may be all of them. It's kind of a waiting game to play and see. There also are some settlements that are currently held up in bankruptcy as well that haven't been paid out, but these are the ones that we're working with so far. So with all of those settlements, they all come with their own specific allocation schedule. Some of them are paid out in a one-time payment upfront. Some of them are paid out half upfront with then different payments over multiple years. And then some of them are only paid out over multiple years with payments varying from 7 to 17 years. We're already on year 4 for the largest settlement, so we have received a decent amount of money to date. It does make it more complicated to track though. They do not pay out the same month of every year, and they all have different payment schedules and different allocations, so it requires tracking of each individual settlement, including the new settlements that come in, and it makes it a little bit harder than something like treatment sales tax that's more consistent on a yearly basis to be able to budget so that when we're ready to move money out the door, we know how much we have. A lot of this has been front-loaded too, so when we go in a little bit to look at the funding that's been received, you'll notice it's really front-loaded. We received multiple settlements that had one-time allocations, multiple settlements that were paid half up front, and then some of the settlements have smaller payments over that 7 to 17 years. So there's a lot of money that's received year 1, 2, and 3, and then the ongoing routine funding ends up being pretty small in the long run.
Katie, if I could just make a quick comment.
Yeah.
That's gonna be, Commissioners, the challenge, because some of these dollars are spread out for many, many years. It gives the effect that some of it looks like it's ongoing, but it always has a timeframe. And then, of course, getting the dollars all up front, as Katie mentioned, from some of the settlements, creates a large bucket of funds to start working with. But we have to be careful about the ongoing costs and any type of program we set up. And that's, I think, something that I know Katie has mentioned to us, and so it's gonna be mindful as the abatement council continues to talk through things.
So when we talk about distribution, that 50% that then gets allocated from the state down to local participating jurisdictions, it's based on a formula that they have developed at the nationwide level, where it's something like pills that were in area and deaths on a certain year and geography and population. It's pretty complicated, but they use the same thing for every settlement across the board. So you can see when we look at the percentage of allocation that we receive from the 50%, Thurston County as a whole receives about 3.37% of that total funding, with Thurston County receiving a bulk of that. So you can see Thurston County is gonna receive 2.3%, with 3.3% being for Thurston County overall. So then when we start to break down more into the actual dollar amounts for settlement allocations, you can see the different payment schedules for each of the settlements. Some of them being one-time payments, some of them 7 years, all the way up to the 18 years. Years 1 and 2 were combined on that one. You can see the allocations. The allocations that you're seeing are gonna be for Thurston County only. So only the funding that the county is receiving. It does not include the funding that our 3 city jurisdictions are receiving. We will be able to update with those numbers soon, but these are gonna be just the county numbers for now. So you can also see on the far right, the allocations received to date. We have almost $3.5 million in settlement money that's already been received at the county. And our projected total is gonna be a little over 10 million, and that's the total at the end of those 17, 18 years.
None of this is programmed into anything yet.
We have not touched it.
One of the points of discussion, as I came to the county, the Opioid Abatement Council had not officially started meeting yet. So I understand that there was a discussion amongst the county and the cities about pooling funds and how that would look and what type of arrangements would have to be made. I still think that is a discussion that may have to be had that will come ultimately before the commissioners. Can we go back one slide?
But currently, is that a total allocation or is that just the county allocation?
It's just the county.
That's just the 2.3%?
Yes.
And none of it's obligated to anything. And we have our own opioid abatement council that will be reviewing this, but ultimately it's the decision of the county commissioners how this will be allocated.
So that was the main decision point, sorry, County Manager. And it was actually Leonard's first mayor's meeting where this issue got brought up, and it was in regards to the Opioid Abatement Council. And so there's been difference of opinions between the jurisdictions on the process of how the funding would get approved and the process that it would follow. Some of the jurisdictions feel like it needs to go basically through all the councils and then the county, and just how long that would take is definitely a concern. Our suggestion was having it similar to, having the commissioners vote on that, and some of the jurisdictions weren't in agreement with that. So I think there is just still a lot of conversations in regards to the ILA and the makeup and the process for that. So that's why this funding is still kind of in.
And why not each jurisdiction decide what they feel is appropriate?
That is currently how it's set up. I think that the decision point is if we come together and pool our resources, and why I've understood that there may be an interest in that is not every jurisdiction has the type of infrastructure that we have with public health and our staff that have a lot of expertise and a lot of inroads. So there may be an interest in bringing some of that together, but there's some discussions that would have to take place.
Then we find ourselves in the same situation that we're always in, where we have 2.32%, and then we have the same decision-making authority as a jurisdiction that has 0.2% in the pot.
I think that's what's trying to be worked out. I know that previous Assistant County Manager Robin Campbell informed me that there was a concept where, like the Regional Housing Council, I believe, it would come to the commissioners for a thumbs up and thumbs down. And if it was a thumbs down, then it would go back to the Opioid Abatement Council. I don't know how far those conversations got, because when I re-engaged after receiving input from the mayors and city managers about we're waiting on the county to bring the Opioid Abatement Council together, and I didn't realize that. So we brought them together. the former position was they were trying to solve that question before they came together. So now we brought them together, and that's a question that's gonna have to come through, which public works staff will, and public health staff will keep the commissioners updated on how that's playing out.
The issue, sorry, Josh, but the issue, I'll stop real soon. The issue that, like, I would see coming was the same one that happens every single time, is where if we, we divest our decision-making and give it to some other body for a thumbs up, thumbs down, we end up getting some fully baked idea at the end of the day that we're just expected, so like whatever decision process we come up with, I would hope that we come up with one where it allows the county commissioners to weigh in and actually have, some influence over the final decision instead of just being subjected to a final decision.
So as
Sure.
Katie stated at the beginning of this is the 101, part one, and the second briefing is the discussion on the how. So this is the what, to level set the conversation, so everybody has the same shared understanding of the information. And then the next conversation is how do you want to move forward with the MOU? What are the allowable sources? So what we're doing today is just making sure everybody has a shared reality.
Gotcha.
And then we can talk about
I'm getting ahead of my
next.
skis.
It's okay, it's all good. This is a lot of information. But the recognition that Leonard started with at the front is that since the past few years, no one else except for Thurston County here locally has been tracking it as closely as Katie has. So listening to this trusted resource, so we have a shared understanding, will help us essentially go slow to go fast. So then when we get to the decision-making process of the how, everybody's got a shared understanding. Jim?
And I wanna mention that, I completely agree with, recognizing Katie. I mean, Katie's leadership is known, not only statewide, countywide, and nationally. I mean, Katie's, doing an amazing job. And at the opioid abatement council meeting, it was, really, just like Leonard said, did an amazing job. And so I know that, we're all learning together and trying to get, these different pieces figured out. And the one thing that I think that I feel like we could be pretty sure of is that everyone looks to Katie for leadership. And with that knowledge of the amount of time and effort that she puts in the larger scope of things, that when it comes to, we can do better with all of the money, instead of just a piece of the money. And so I felt like in the abatement council, everyone was in agreement that, we would be able to, put money together and that we would all push it towards something that would help the county. And so I just wanted to give you guys that perspective.
I also would piggyback on that. In the OAC, I think, again, Katie, this is weird talking about you in front of you, but Katie did a nice job of slowing that conversation down, which was, we need to have this education first before we come to any decisions on the how. So that was also talked about, that the OAC jumped ahead just like you all are doing at this moment, which is totally understandable. But that Katie pulled everybody back and said, we're not quite there yet, let's get an understanding of the information, so.
All right. Unpause.
So again, where we were at is kind of, so we've received 3.5 million to date out of our a little over 10 million. This is only county allocation, but it's gonna represent the overwhelming majority of the total settlement money that's coming into Thurston County. Even though this is only Thurston County funding, the other jurisdictions have also not been allowed to touch their funding yet. We will get into that more, especially next week at the next board briefing. But there are certain requirements in the One Washington MOU, which every jurisdiction signed on to receive direct payment, that have to be met before anyone can touch their money. So just while we have been waiting to touch our settlement money, the cities have also not been able to allocate or spend any of their settlement money either. Everyone is waiting until everyone's on the same page to be able to move forward, because we do have to have certain things met in our MOU. And so this just kind of breaks, the blue and the gray is a little hard to differentiate on the screen. But the blue is gonna be actual dollars that have been received to date, so that is money that we have actually received, and then the gray is gonna be projected revenue that we'll receive. This is also only county numbers, it'll be updated to include the funding that the other jurisdictions receive. But you can see a bulk of our funding came up front in 2022, and then there's a large drop off where our ongoing funding is really only about $500,000, if not less than $500,000 million per year on an ongoing basis up to the 2038.
Katie, so this graph will look the same, the picture will look the same, just the dollars will change for the cities. And this demonstrates your concept of front loading.
So then when we kind of start to jump ahead as far as actually spending the settlement funds, we are bound to something that's called the One Washington Memorandum of Understanding. All of the jurisdictions in Washington who receive direct payment signed it. It is a condition of direct payment. So we had to sign it in order to be part of the settlement funding. It outlines the requirements that have to be met by the jurisdictions prior to spending the settlement funds, and it also requires the beginning of the meeting of the opioid abatement councils, including what the opioid abatement councils' role are. So because the One Washington MOU requires standing up the OACs before spending, we had to have last week's meeting before we're even able to move forward with looking at spending our funding. The One Washington MOU also dives into how we're allowed to use the funding. Everyone kind of saw what happened with the tobacco settlements back in the day, where there were the tobacco funding settlements, and then that got allocated to all kinds of different things, not just public health purposes or tobacco related purposes, and they didn't want that to happen with opioid settlement funding. So they've made it extremely clear in the MOU that there are only certain allowable uses for the funding, and then there are also priority areas on top of that that a bulk of the funding has to be used within. So we can't just take it and do things like roads or other projects. We can't just sweep it into general fund, the same as the state is bound to as well. So then I did also just want to touch on some of the engagement that Thurston County has had to date, because while the Opioid Abatement Council did just start meeting, and we have had conversations about the Opioid Abatement Council for a few years now, we have been doing other work as well. So Thurston County does co-chair the State Opioid and Overdose Response Plan Communications Work Group. So that's going to be under the state's efforts for opioid response. Any communications related work, we co-chair it with Healthcare Authority and the State Department of Health. We're also the only local health jurisdiction to lead a work group at the state level around opioid and overdose response. Thurston County assisted in writing multiple state settlement proposals for the state 50% of the funding as well. Ultimately, those did go to the legislature to decide what to fund and what not to fund, but we were one of the only local health jurisdictions that participated in that process. And we are also one of the only health jurisdictions that participate in all of the state opioid and overdose response plan work groups in order to provide feedback and stay engaged across the whole process. And then at the local level, we have had ongoing participation. Healthcare Authority runs a learning collaborative for all jurisdictions to kind of learn more about the opioid settlement process. And then Thurston County, in partnership with Seattle King County, co-chairs the statewide Opioid Abatement Council Community of Practice, which is really meant for the folks who are running and doing the administrative work for the opioid abatement councils to meet, to learn from each other, and to navigate the process.
If I could just add on to that, Katie in some of these is the only local representative or one of the only local representatives. So Thurston County will continuously receive the most up-to-date information, what's happening statewide, what's happening in other counties, which will set us ahead. So this is an important keynote that she's tied in at all levels.
And then just one additional resource that I wanted to share. So it is a ton of information. I've tried to break it down into a bite-sized piece for this week as well as next week. There is a great resource though developed by Christine Minhey. It's called opioidsettlementtracker.com. It's a really user-friendly website to look at, and it has all of the information for opioid settlements across the nation. So it's broken down by state as well as local jurisdictions. You can see the status of each individual settlement, as well as track the process that each state is going through for their spending.
Vice Chairman, we may not have a quorum anymore.
Which would mean we can't take action, but we can still receive information. So I would just continue the meeting and you provide information, but we can't tell you what to do or anything like
And I
that.
don't believe we need any action on this item. This is just
It was information only, and that was that.
It was great information. Questions? So I imagine there's some type of guidance or prescription as far as what types of activities are eligible for this funding? Is there any information to provide on that?
Yeah,
Or
we'll
did I
be,
miss that slide?
no,
Is
we'll
that
be,
next week?
that's next week.
Okay.
Because
And I'm gonna
there's so
don't
much
answer
info on it.
Don't answer it.
Can you explain what is on the opioid tracker?
Lots of cool
What,
stuff.
if they would to dig deeper, what would they find?
Yeah, so on the opioid settlement tracker website, you can pull it down by state to see how each state is allocating. You can also track all of the settlements and see where they're at, so you can look at the settlements that are in bankruptcy court right now to see where those are falling. And they also have published kind of some media pieces that have come out about how states are leveraging and getting input from folks with lived experience, how they're subcontracting out funding and things like that. Because while every state is doing it similarly, they are all different and each jurisdiction is a little different as well, even just in Washington.
And when you come back next week, correct? With the MOU and the allowable uses. So the allowable uses are what the state is saying you can work on. And then the MOU, that's the discussion for how the partnership goes in terms of allocating the resources.
Kind of, so the MOU establishes the opioid abatement council, but not the actual spending, with the exception of the allowable uses that are laid out. And the allowable uses are nationwide, not just statewide.
Okay.
Just wanna cut in, just for the record, letting the world know that we no longer have a quorum. So this meeting is now just information purposes only. We're just sitting here, receiving a briefing from public health. No decisions can be made or will be made during this meeting without a quorum. All right. Is there any further questions for public health?
Thanks for breaking this up into two parts, Katie.
Yeah.
This is pretty detailed. And if this is I understand this is the presentation you went over with the council, which is great background information for all of them, because it is very technical. So it took a lot of years of tracking and condensed it down into a bite-sized piece, so well done.
Thank you. Good. We have one more item on the agenda, commissioners' items. However, there are only two commissioners here. So unless there's any kicking or screaming, I will ask that we adjourn the meeting.